from students. Like literally over the last 72 hours, I've had a bunch of students that are transferring. So I'm going to make this video. This is surviving upper division accounting courses at four-year universities. So my disclaimer, the presentation is for informational purposes only and represents the opinion of me, and no representations are made whatsoever on behalf of Irvine Valley College and or the South Orange County Community College District, right? These are my opinions, right? And just like everything else, don't believe me. Talk to other people, talk to others, and make your own opinion. But really what I'm trying to do is to help you get through this. So this is an overview of what we're going to be covering today. And normally I would make it into a couple different videos, but I know that most of you like to put me on 1.75 speed, which is cool. So have fun with that. Okay. Now, why are we talking about this today? So when you're taking accounting classes, and let's just let's go over here. If you're going to take upper division accounting classes and you don't want to become a CPA, you're crazy. Because these classes are going to be harder than most of the other upper division finance or other classes you take because they're preparing you for full-time employment. And you have to know your debits and credits. You need to know how to record transactions, because if you don't, it's not going to look good when you go out to an employer. But let's just be real. The accounting classes, if they're taught right, are going to be very, very challenging. You're learning a skill that's ultimately going to be getting you employment. I can tell you from my experience, I had an instructor by the name of Henry Sander, who I love dearly. And this guy motivated me to doing what I'm doing today. And if you're out there, Henry, thank you. That guy just absolutely destroyed me in the summer of 1989. And then I took him for intermediate in the fall of 89, and I did really well in his class, but it was because of the preparation he gave me. That last quarter of intermediate accounting, and then the second one over the summer, was by far harder than anything else I ever took during when I was in law school. So, and a lot of my students, you're asking okay, what school do I choose? And we'll talk about this. And the thing I really want you to kind of keep in mind is the cost. Like one of my former students basically told me, she said, look, I'm working here at Ernst & Young in Orange County. I've got my degree from the University of Southern California. My wife calls it the University of Superior Choice, whatever you're going to call it. But she was a transfer student. She went to IVC, then she went to USC. And she can say fight on, but she's sitting there working. When she was at EY, she's no longer there, but she was sitting next to students who were basically from Cal State Fullerton getting paid the same amount of money, but they were not in debt. Now, because Cal State Fullerton for a California resident is about $8,000 a year with parking. So there you go. And this is the whole thing too, is the one good thing about a school like USC or Chapman, you have that alumni network provided you tap into it, right? So just think about that. But at the same time, when it comes to everything, it's really about your hustle. It's not about where you got your degree from, it's what you do with it. So that's just kind of the thing to think about is, the school will matter for a certain amount of time, but over time, especially in accounting, it's really going to be if you're a CPA, if you're not a CPA, what exactly kind of goes through and happens. But again, if you're taking upper division accounting classes, you want to become a CPA. So a little bit about me, Bennett Tchaikovsky. So I'm a licensed California CPA and attorney, also a real estate broker. I have worked as a chief financial officer. You can go on to sec.gov and look for me. I've also been currently a board member for a publicly traded company. I've been doing this since about December of 2000, working as a CFO. Before that, I was an assistant controller/controller. Again, you can find my biography on sec.gov. I've been teaching at IVC full-time since August of 2014. So I'm actually right now heading into my 10th year. I absolutely love teaching at Irvine Valley College, and I'll kind of explain a little bit why shortly. But I taught intermediate accounting, 301A for Cal State Fullerton in spring of 22 and spring of 23. And again, I got a lot of questions from students like, hey, Bennett, are you going to be teaching intermediate for us? And the answer is probably not. But I've also taught at Chapman, which is also going to be important in my discussion, Long Beach City College, and Pasadena City College. So those are the other places where I've gone through and taught. Now, in terms of the coursework that I've taught, I really have taught classes that I have the most familiarity with. Financial accounting, managerial accounting, honors managerial, intermediate accounting, accounting ethics, quick bookkeeping, QuickBooks. And this is really where my wheelhouse is in terms of I spent a lot of time preparing for these classes, but it's really where I've been doing most of my work. Now, what classes would I not want to teach? The first one's going to be taxation because I don't practice tax. Now, when I went to law school, did I take like 7 tax courses? The answer is absolutely yes. I took like 7 tax classes, but being a CPA had to boost up my GPA because I did so terribly in constitutional law. So I had to do something to help myself up. So again, taxation is a class where you want to be taught by by somebody who has worked in tax. Hank Adler at Chapman, great example. There's an instructor who is a former partner, I believe, at EY, who is at Cal State Fullerton, great instructor to take, right? Those are instructors that have been working with the Internal Revenue Code for years, right? They're going to be much better than I would ever be at tax. Could I do it? Sure, but I'm not going to spend the time doing it. Now, maybe would I want to teach? Auditing. The problem with me teaching you as a teaching auditing is that I am not an audit partner. And we have audit partners, amazing ones like Wayne Pennell at Haskell and White, Deanna Bowden at Clifton Larson Allen, and there's others that are out there who do a great job on that front because that's what they do every day. They're going to be able to better teach you than, say, myself. Now, could I do it? Sure, because I'm a board member and I've seen all the audit committee presentations. I know generally what they do. Actually, I know what they do, maybe not in the intimate detail that a partner, but I could figure it out. Cost accounting, could I do it? Possibly, but I wouldn't. It's not something that I would really consider doing, even if I become a certified management accountant. But again, it's something that's really an expansion of managerial. Advanced accounting, governmental and consolidations. Again, I learned this I took a class at UCSB and one in 1 year, out the other. And I basically did a little bit of consolidations at some point. But again, these would be classes that I would need to really be preparing substantially for, and I really wouldn't want to do it. Yes, though, external financial reporting, financial statement analysis, absolutely. I've written those classes and I'm hopefully going to get those approved soon for teaching at IBC. Now, the reason why this is really important to you is that myself as an instructor, I am admitting to you as my student, like, what's my experience? Because that's going to make your class a lot better. I'm not going to teach you something that I don't know that. And when you're looking at professors and instructors to take, as we're going to see a little bit later, this is something that you want to kind of just figure out. Okay. 4-year public universities. Okay. So 4-year public universities, there is a huge pressure to publish, right? And there is a very, very big difference between faculty with a PhD and instructional faculty. When I've taught at Cal State Fullerton and at Chapman, I'm an instructional faculty, right? I don't have tenure. They can fire me whenever they want. And there you go. It is what it is. But at the same time, though, they have a huge pressure to publish. And I love the fact that the publishing that I do, like this video, probably has more views than most of the stuff that's being published by 4-year universities. My channel, thanks to you guys, I've got something like 30,000 hours watched. It's great, right? And the other thing I would say too, and this may not be necessarily fair, but a lot of times because of that pressure to publish, teaching may not necessarily be their primary focus at a 4-year public university. Because if they have to go through and publish, they're not going to be necessarily focused on the teaching part, say, as much. And when you get into some of these classes, what you're going to end up finding is a lot of instructors are going to be pulling stuff from the test banks, like of Wiley, McGraw-Hill, or the others, right? So you want to kind of just be really mindful of when you're going to a 4-year public university, you're paying $8,000 a year. Cal State Fullerton, this is, I think, their tuition for fall of 2023, spring 24. So again, you're not going to be their primary focus. And again, accreditation, they have a very high accreditation standard. It's one of those things, right? So you have to have substantial current professional experience or basically be a PhD with the publishing. But the 4-year public universities, they offer a very cost-effective education. And I would also say something too. Cal State Fullerton has a very strong reputation with employers. They have a lot of great accounting graduates. And like, look, I am not bashing at all, like when I'm saying like teaching is not the primary focus. But as a student there, and I talked to a student yesterday, and it's the student community, which is really strong with like the Accounting Society, Beta Alpha Psi, especially at Cal State Fullerton. And that is really what draws employers. And they hire a lot of graduates, right? So again, great thing. Now, in terms of the pay disparity as like an instructor, when I was offered full-time at a private school, I was going to be making about half of what a full-time PhD would make. So you're paid substantially less than what you would normally be going through and doing. Now, the other part of this too is that even if you have a PhD in accounting, to get tenure is really tough. So all these professors, they have to publish. The focus is not on their students. It's the publishing. And the biggest thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind, and you're going to see this basically with both public and private universities, is that you have to be mindful of the curving. And they may not say it, but they have a curve requirement. You want to check with your instructor. You want to ask your instructor, what do you have to curve the class to? Fair question, very fair question. And I would say that, for me, at teaching at Cal State Fullerton, I had to come up with a 2.3 curve. How did I do it? Well, when I teach intermediate accounting at IVC, you've got 2 hours and 50 minutes for the test. Pretty fair exam. Cal State Fullerton, hour 15. And so you're looking at, made it a little bit simpler, but it's very, very, very challenging. So again, you want to basically check with your instructor in terms of how this is going to go through and work. Now, for your private universities, okay, now the big difference is, one, money. You're paying a lot of cash, right? So you're paying a lot of cash, and where you see over here, teaching is not the primary focus. Teaching is their focus. And in fact, my favorite story, when I was at Chapman University, when I was going through orientation, and this is in the fall of 2018, they pulled us aside. They said, hey, look, if you're not here for the students, you're gone. And that is truly my philosophy as well. So it's something I really, truly do agree with. So teaching is a huge focus, much bigger than what you're going to see at a public university. But again, it's because the students are spending so much money. You deserve that personal attention. Okay, so again, education, very costly. If you're going to go into huge debt for an accounting education, that's why, kind of going back to my former student here, like if you're going to get into debt for 10 times the amount of what it would normally cost you as a regular undergraduate student, you need to figure out a way how you're going to go through and pay for that. So at Chapman, they do a great job with getting if you're a veteran, there's a lot of programs there to help veterans get through. But again, you want to be looking at scholarships or other types of things, because the education is very, very expensive, right? That has to be a huge consideration, because if you're going to be graduating, say, making $80,000 a year in California, which means about 40 grand after tax, and you're living in an apartment in Irvine, that's going to be hard debt to service. Okay. So generally, again, tenure is also an issue. And also as an instructor, I would never be able to get tenure at any 4-year school. But again, they have a 2.3 curve requirement. This is both also at private universities. Now, privates may be a little bit more lenient on this, but the reason why that they will have this curve requirement is because I think that they're trying to basically say, well, we're weeding out all these kids so that by the time you're getting to the employers, it's better. But again, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with it. Now let's go to California community colleges. So at least this is for, or I should probably say Irvine Valley College, because I can't speak for any of the other ones. Student focused. We're here for students. We are required to have 5 office hours a week as full-time faculty. Teaching is our primary focus. We're here to deliver the material to you as students the best way. The cost is a steal. California residents, $46 a unit. The downside is that we don't have the recruiting, but I say that kind of with guarded words because we're kind of getting some traction on that front, at least at Irvine Valley College. And the great thing is if you're a full-time faculty at a California community college, especially if you have a doctorate, you're going to get paid very well. And you have tenure after 4 years being full-time. And then we don't have a curbing requirement. But I would say this, like, I'm not going to pass a student that doesn't deserve to be passed. And it's one of those things that for me, if I'm sending a student to an employer that I haven't personally tested and, made sure they understand the material, then I'm not doing a good job because it's going to make my school and my program look poor. So it's important to me that you have the best possible education. Now, why is this background so important? And it's because before we go on to our next topic is that when you're taking instructors at, different accounting instructors at your 4-year universities or at a community college, you need to know, am I going to have to learn this stuff on my own? Or am I going to have people that can help me? Like mainly the professors. At private schools and community colleges, the professors generally should be very, very available to you. Public 4-year universities, you may have issues, right? But at the same time, though, you have to try to learn the material on your own. I would say that in almost any case, just because when you go in and meet with your instructor, it's essentially you're going to have a better have a better rapport. And it's something that you're going to have to be going through and doing anyways when you start at your full-time job. And again, you're not paying for a Cal State Fullerton, right? You're not paying a lot of money for the degree or even at a UC. And this is something that, hey, look, it's great because Cal State Fullerton has the biggest accounting recruiting events in Orange County, bigger than UCI, even though it's ranked lower than UCI, but Fullerton for accounting, bigger than UCI recruitment, bigger than Chapman, bigger than Biola, bigger than almost all of them, bigger than Cal State Long Beach. Fullerton is like literally the juggernaut. And so when you kind of think about it, you're not paying, you have those opportunities, but you have to basically make sure that you're going to have to really take control of your own education if you're going to say like a Cal State Fullerton. And we'll talk about that just in a moment. By the way, too, international students pay a ton of money for UCs and Cal States. It's some ridiculous amount of money. Frankly, if it were me, I would go to a private school just because at least if I'm paying all that money at a private school, they're going to kiss my, my donkey. So I want them to kiss my donkey if I'm paying 80 grand a year to go to school. So again, if you're an international student, I would really consider going to a private over a UC or Cal State. Okay, so here's where I'm assuming that you are, right? Before we get into this next topic, which is about going through and actually taking the classes. But have you gotten to know your fellow accounting students? Have you joined Beta Alpha Psi? Have you joined the Accounting Society or the Accounting Association? If it's not one of those organizations, you need to join something that you're going to be involved with. If you're working full time, that's okay. You're just going to have to really note that on the resume. I would also say too that you want to have the jobs with public interaction are great. Walmart, Target, you've been yelled at by customers. Things have been thrown at you, right? They don't like you. How have you been able to resolve those situations peacefully, right? Also, before you start, make sure you are on LinkedIn, right? If you are not on LinkedIn, you have to make sure that you're on LinkedIn. Very, very important. I cannot stress the importance of this because most of the firms are going through here and recruiting from here. And the other place where you also want to kind of go to if you need resources, right over here, my faculty website at Irvine Valley College. I'm going to put this basically in the link below. But over here, interviewing, sample resumes, right? If you need a resume, come over here, download it, right? It's all here, right? But make sure you have this stuff done before going in. Also, make sure you have taken classes that you know how to do VLOOKUP, pivot tables. Make sure you've taken those Microsoft Excel courses. Extremely important, right? Accounting 112.1, Accounting 112.2, Accounting 112.3. Make sure you've taken those classes. Cannot understate this or overstate it. You've got to know Excel going into for all of your business classes. Employers absolutely expect it. Now, as far as before we get into this presentation was titled Surviving Upper Division Accounting Classes, right? So we've kind of talked about knowing your environment. Are you at a Cal State? Are you at a private school, right? And those are really going to have a variation in terms of like, well, how are they going to help you? Now, with lower division accounting, there's really only two classes you generally take. You're going to take financial accounting, which is going to prepare you for intermediate 1 and 2. And really the question I always ask is that if you're given an unadjusted trial balance, can you prepare adjusting journal entries? Can you prepare a multi-step income statement? Can you do a statement of retained earnings, balance sheet, cash flow? Do you know how to do those things? If you do, you're generally going to be pretty prepared for intermediate accounting. Managerial accounting is really preparing you for upper division cost accounting, right? And again, depending on how you were taught managerial accounting, you should be pretty well prepared for cost accounting. But again, everybody teaches things differently. I use problem-based questions. I don't like multiple choice. So what does that mean? It basically means that you're going to be doing a lot of problems, but it's going to prepare you for the CPA exam because the CPA exam, it's 50% task-based simulations, which are very, I don't say they're exactly like my accounting problems, but they're pretty close. Okay, now coursework at the upper division level. So when you're taking, so remember, when you are an accounting major, these classes are going to be harder than if you were just a regular econ major, right? If I was a regular econ major, I could party, but if I'm an accounting major, I've got to take some pretty hard classes. But the advantage is I'm preparing to become a CPA, which is going to set me up for my entire career, right? Or at least until AI figures everything out. But for right now, it's going to prepare you very, very well to become a CPA. And when you look at this over here, like individual and business taxation, this is going to prepare you for reg. Some schools like Fullerton have something called Accounting 308, which is basically just income tax. Now, for income tax, you can probably just take lower division financial accounting. If you had a strong lower division financial accounting class, you're probably going to be fine. But if you start getting into some of the other ones that get a little bit more difficult, intermediate accounting, right? 1 and 2, this is going to prepare you for financial accounting and reporting, advanced accounting, consolidated governmental. And when I'm referring to these CPA sections, this is as of 2023. When everything updates in 2024 on January 1st, it's going to be very different. But over here, you've got advanced accounting, auditing, cost accounting, accounting information systems. In my opinion, intermediate's the worst. Taxation, no one really understands. You kind of understand tax more once you're actually preparing returns and you're actually doing it. That's how you learn tax. Governmental and consolidations, you're going to learn governmental and you're probably never going to use it again unless you're practicing it all the time. Consolidations, you'll sometimes see it. I had some jobs where I did it. Auditing, pretty important to do just because it's a whole section on its own of the CPA exam. And if you are going to be working in public accounting, that's probably what you're going to be starting with. Cost accounting, again, if you had strong managerial, you should be good. Accounting information systems, again, also important. Accounting ethics, it's pretty much also covered throughout. You can take this with me at Irvine Valley. And then lastly, you've got data analytics. Now, prior to taking a class, let's talk about something. What is due diligence? Due diligence are reasonable steps taken by a person in order to satisfy a legal requirement, especially in buying or selling something. So when I'm talking about accounting due diligence, right, I'm not talking about this part, but I'm talking about like, let's go through and figure out what we're going through and doing, right? So if I come over here to rate my professors, okay. Okay, so right over here, we're going to look at me at Irvine Valley College, right? So right over here, you see I pay my students really well to leave me good feedback. Over here, you've got all these different ones. And so there you go. So what you're really looking for is you're really looking for basically for consistency. What I would also recommend doing is that if you have an instructor, right, and I'll show you this like right over here. So one of the things you can also see over here is that I've taught at other places as well, right? So if I want to look at name, so if you want to say like, look me up at Chapman University, right? You can basically say, this is when I taught at Chapman. And these are basically the feedback that I've basically received from my students at Chapman. And again, and if you come over here to Pasadena City College, basically, again, you see this is somebody who should have been putting that in the IVC part, but again, they just put it over here at Pasadena. So again, I would just say, like, see what the consistency is, right? The thing is, I'm going to tell you right now about rate my professors, right? I encourage my students to leave me feedback. I'm not going to pay them anything to do it, even though I joke about it, but what you have to be careful of, if someone has a bad test day, they usually like to go on Rate My Professors and torch the instructor, right? Or they'll leave glowing reviews. So it really, when you're looking at the reviews, take it with a grain of salt. Don't use it as your sole source. Next one over here is LinkedIn, right? So over here, if you see me in my thinner days, right over here, my experience, right? So over here, you see basically my different experiences, basically in terms of what I've done, CFO, director, CFO, VP, digital lava, controller, all these different things. So when you're going through and looking at this, right, you want to basically say, who is the person that is going through and teaching me? Do they have any real experience? And the reason why this becomes really important is because when you're taught the material, are they reading PowerPoint slides to you, or are they actually going through and using SEC filings, right? So just as an example, when I teach intermediate accounting, what I will go through and do is I will basically come over here and say eBay. So if I'm teaching, say, the topic of discontinued operations, and I'm looking for an example, like, oh, how do I teach this topic of discontinued operations? I don't know. Well, the best way for me to teach it to you is to actually show you an example of a company that has discontinued operations, like eBay. So again, this is something, when you're looking at things in the larger scheme of things, you want to basically make sure that as you're going through, it's like, how am I going to learn the material? I like to use sec.gov, right? Something that I want to go through and check out. There you go. Okay, now the other thing I can also do too is you can actually go through and look up someone's license. So am I a licensed CPA? I don't know. Let's find out. If I say Bennett, Tchaikovsky, and I do a search, and boom, there I am, right up here. Got a couple other different names up here, but I have other previous names. I took my wife's last name. But over here, you can go through and see my license, right? So I'm clear. It expires in June of 2025. So again, you can go through and look up someone on the website. Over here, sec.gov. Okay, let's go over here to enforcement. Okay, so let's see over here. And let's see here. Let's see. Can't find me yet. I guess I'm out of the blue. But what you can go through and do is you can basically go through and say, okay, let's look up someone's information. Okay, so for example, I'm currently a director at iPower. So if I go through over here and I turn this off, and I want to look for this, and right over here, this is me. So this is something that I had to go through and have a background track and be vetted. You can actually go through and look me up and see who I am. Again, it's just another tool that you have to kind of go through and to see like, oh, who is this instructor that is teaching me? Look their name up on the web, find out who you're going through and taking, because if you're taking someone who is going to be not give you a good experience, it's not going to be fun. Most importantly, talk to your fellow students. So this kind of goes back to why did I want you to come over here and join Beta Alpha Psi or the Accounting Society? It's basically because when you're looking before you go through and take a class, talk to your other fellow students. Very important to do, because rate my professors, again, may not be completely accurate, but it's something that you really want to try to go through and do. Now, what type of class am I taking? You need to know what you're getting into. Am I going to have to self-teach myself, or what's going on? You'll sometimes find instructors, and we've seen this all the time, and it's not necessarily their fault, but sometimes they'll just take the PowerPoints that are provided by the publisher and they will read through the slides. I can proudly say that after 7 years, I'm pretty much avoiding the slides in intermediate accounting. But again, it's because I've taught the class like 9 or 10 times. I still have to do a little bit of prep work beforehand, but I can generally figure it out. Now, are they using a test bank, or are they writing their own questions? I write my own questions for exams. They're all self-written. I write them myself. Now, if I go through though, and if someone is going through and saying like, okay, they're using a test bank, that's when I want to go check this out. You got to check it, right? So because why? All of the publisher test banks are pretty much up on Chegg, or they are on Course Hero if they're basically if they're done by a publisher. What I have found is that the publishers, they make so much money off of Chegg and these other places that they do not enforce their copyrights. Okay, now going to the next question. Accounting, in my opinion, is a practical science, right? What is the experience of the instructor? Are they a CPA? If they're a CPA, it basically means that they passed the exam, they had at least 5 years of education, 150 units. They also have at least a year of work experience, right? So the biggest question here is, what is their experience? This goes back to over here. Why did I kind of say this at the very beginning? What classes would I not teach? If I was teaching a tax class, I would be so freaked out right now, because it's like one of those things where it's like, oh my God, I don't have any experience in this field. I'm going to have to really, really put so much more time into it. And when you take the class, you'll see it. It's kind of, if they haven't done it before, it's what can sometimes be painful, right? Also, too, syllabus. You have to look at the syllabus. The syllabus is essentially your contract for the class. Work backwards. What do I need to do to get done? Make sure that you are doing the work, right? And again, there's a lot of resources available to you, both online, offline. Make sure that you basically figure those out. Also over here too, what I was mentioning, if you go into lecture and you're taking copious notes on whatever the lecturer is saying, and you get to the exam and the exam is totally different than what was covered on the lecture, then you need to figure out, then I have to change what I'm doing. I have to de-emphasize the lecture and then basically focus more on basically learning things on my own, because that's what's going to prepare me for the class. And again, remember about the 2.3 curve requirement, right? Because if you're at a school that has one of these, this is going to drastically impact your grade. One of my students at USC came in, he got a B plus with a 94% in the class. Go figure. Okay. Once you're in the course, here's some things I would really suggest to you. Even if you did well on the test, visit with the instructor to go over what you missed or go over what you kind of thought, or basically try to learn from the instructor about what happened on the exam. I am extremely open about what I test on. Now, will I get mad, or, if I've got a student that failed the test versus someone who got a 99% in my office at the same time, I need to spend time with a person who failed the test, because the one who's at the 99%, I might say, well, you need a little tune up here. But the one who failed the exam, I need to have a longer, deeper conversation, right? Get to know your instructors, right? If you have a conflict, make an appointment with the professors. Very important to do. Find out how they can help you in your career, right? I'm here to help my students, and I much more enjoy talking about the career stuff rather than accounting. But if you want to talk about either, I'm here to do it. Also, prepare yourself prior to coming into class. Try teaching yourself the material so that when you walk into the class, it's a review, right? Really important. And also, again, if you did poorly on the exam, meet with a professor and figure out what you did incorrectly. Never, ever be aggressive. Try to say, what can I do to do better? Admit fault. Say, I don't understand this, right? Can you explain this to me, right? Also, too, once you are near the end of your, so say if you do an internship at a Big Four firm and you're going to graduate in the spring. So you do a Big Four internship the summer of 2023, you're going to graduate in spring of 24. Once you have the offer from the accounting firm, they will generally go through and provide you with, access to the CPA review classes. So what you want to go through and do is start using that material to study for the exam, because you can take the CPA exam while you are in school, provided you get your bachelor's and have the 24 and 24 in California when you're done. Okay. If you're not learning anything in the class, meaning that if they're just reading PowerPoints, you're going to need to learn the material on your own. And the reason why this is so important is because guess what? You have to pay, what is it? If you pay the devil, you owe the devil their due, right? You're going to have to learn it, because you're going to have to see the devil when you come into the CPA exam. It's a friendly devil. It's not the super devil. I had the super devil, which was 19 and a half hours over 3 days. You have a friendlier devil, which is only 4 hours, and you can reschedule it and stuff like that. But again, I've seen students on the Becker logs where they'll say, I don't know what I'm doing because I'm taking an online class or whatever it was. I didn't learn anything. So what do I do? So you have to learn the material on your own. So again, I have a lot of videos on YouTube for intermediate accounting. You can find them. If you need help on how to get them, just leave a message below. Also, one of the things I'll share is that I had a student who was one of my top students in managerial accounting and financial accounting. And she took me for intermediate accounting, and she struggled. And I'm like going, what's going on? And she said, well, she had a lot of stuff happening this semester, but she was studying with other students. And it turns out that those other students were teaching her the wrong way. And what I would tell you is that you have to believe in yourself. Don't help out others until you've really learned the material yourself first, right? Because you have to make sure you know it first. If you know it really, really well, like back of your hand, then you can help out others. But I would be very, very careful about doing that. Accounting is not a course that you want to wait until the last minute to study for, because it's that difficult of classes. It's just something you want to just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So after the class, most importantly, help others, like just help people become CPAs, do the right thing, give back to your fellow accounting students, try to help out other people. That's really what this is all about. it's one of those things where I see a lot of students, and this is at community colleges, at four-year public and private schools, where they've kind of like, I don't want to say like lost direction, but it's like just try to be kind, try to help out others along the way. This is really, really important to go through and do. And again, I want to thank you for liking and subscribing to my channel, and also for the presentation. If you have questions, you can send me an email. But again, just some closing thoughts. Like, look, nothing is ever going to be perfect. I can never teach a perfect class. I can try to do my best. But when you're going through, if you go through and spend the time on trying to figure out, what class am I taking? What am I going to need to do to be successful? What am I getting myself into? You're going to have a much better experience, rather than waiting until the last minute. Oh, I'll take this instructor, they must be good. And it turns out to be a total disaster. So again, just work backwards, get that syllabus, work backwards. If you have any questions, I'm here for you. I look forward to seeing you on future videos, and have a great day. Have a good one.